Good afternoon, and here we are at the Missouri Military Museum, and we're going to have a quick look to see what this wonderful place has got to offer. So, what we've got here, not an Apache, it's a Bell AH-1 Cobra helicopter gunship. That is a serious piece of kit. I wouldn't mind having a go in it. Sadly, I couldn't get to join the RAF, but of course they fly, well, it's the army that fly the Apache, but anyway. Have armoured personnel carrier. There's no designation board up to say what this is. You can get like 6 or 8 troops in there. And of course the cab's down at the front. This is a 65-ton battle tank. I think it's a Patton. I could be wrong. No, it's a Sheridan, not a Patton. Okay. There's not a main battle tank. My bad. Wow, pretty sick. Kind of takes me back to when I was a kid, because Dad used to tell me stories about him. He was a tank commander, and so he would have taught people how to drive these. He would have driven these, navigated them, been in command of them, and so on. Let's see what else we've got. Okay, so here's a couple of Navy guns. They were put on destroyers. Wow. So what we have here is an M4 Sherman. Britain and America both had these. My granddad actually drove these as in the British Army. Theirs was the Sherman Firefly, which had a 90mm gun. This has got a 70mm gun. This is the one that was in films like Kelly's Heroes and stuff like that. 4-man crew. This is just purely my memory filling in the blanks. They had so many of these, they were very, very easy to destroy, but the Americans had so many of them in the war that it took like 4 of them to take out a Tiger or a King Tiger or a Panzer or whatever. But because they just had a sheer number of them, they could outgun the German tanks and take them on. So yeah, M4 Sherman. Here's the main battle tank. This is a Patton, in service in the 60s and 70s. This was essentially the American version of the Chieftain that the British used. You may remember, I'll put a link in the video down below, some nut job went mad with one of these tanks in San Diego and just laid waste to half the city. That was back in the mid-90s. Yeah, he went a bit postal with one of these tanks, as the saying goes. This thing weighs about 60 tons. Look at the tracks on that. Great respect and regard to people who did serve and people who've actually operated these machines and kept us all safe. So now let's have a look at my kind of stuff. Not that tanks aren't my stuff, but there we go. The wonderful F4 Phantom. First flew in 1958. What a glorious machine. Built here in St. Louis, Missouri, where McDonnell Douglas was based. And of course the RAF had them in the Fleet Air Arm, and they re-engineered them with Spey Rolls-Royce engines, supposedly to make them faster, made them slower. No covers over the jet pipes. This thing has got its engine still in place. I don't think so, because you can see all the way to the far end. No, it doesn't have its engines in place, but that is where the engines would have sat, and you can see the wiring looms in there and so on. And under there you've got your hard points. Here you can see a hard point for the missiles. There's 4 of them under there. Hard points for more missiles here. Fantastic. Okay. Then we've got here the C-130 Hercules, or a Fat Albert, as it's called in the RAF. Featured in lots of action films as well. It's in Delta Force, Living Daylight, off the top of my head, The Wild Geese. Again, the RAF flew these as well as the Americans. Just being near this thing, you get the scale of just how big this thing actually is. Four turboprop engines there. I believe it's sealed up today. I don't think they're allowing visits inside it, which is a shame. All the rivet work on the bodywork and the fuselage. There's the loading ramp, and above our head. Yeah, it's locked up today. We can't go inside and have a look, but that's okay. And I've saved the best till last. This is the F-15C, the Eagle. The F-15E was the Strike Eagle with a 2-man crew. Widely regarded as one of the greatest warplanes ever designed and built. First flew in 1974 and entered service with the US Air Force in 1976. You might remember Jeremy Clarkson flying in one of those and throwing his guts up, and then he actually flew it. I think this still holds the record of being one of the only combat aircraft never to have been shot down by an enemy. Served in the Gulf, of course, and in Afghanistan. I've got a book about its service in the Gulf. See the hardpoint underwing pylons. And of course here we've got a cradle for external payload like missiles and so forth. Underneath the fuselage you could fit bombs under there and so on, if you wanted to. 110th Fighter Squadron, St. Louis. Just being near this thing is an absolute thrill. I mean, wow, what an aeroplane. If you want to see one of these in Britain, they are still in service at Lakenheath in Norfolk. And this one's got its end caps, so I'm assuming that this has got its engines in place. Yeah, what a machine. What a machine. I'd love to get into the cockpit of it, but sadly, as you can see, it's closed off. And the cockpit is got that saran wrap stuff on it, so you can't actually have a look at it. Alright, so that's just a quick look at some of what we've got here in Missouri at the Military Museum. Hope you enjoyed that. I'll see you next time out. Cheerio.